Outta Time, The Story of Father Time, by Eugene Mathena and Einstein Bergenhofen. Before he was known as Father Time, he was Dr. Caelum Hartwick, a physicist of rare genius, a quiet man whose mind grasped the mechanics of space-time as easily as others balanced checkbooks. His colleagues at the Zurich Temporal Mechanics Institute whispered of Nobel Prizes, of theories that would rewrite Einstein and Newton alike. He wasn't driven by fame, but by the purity of curiosity, a desire to understand the shape of time itself. That changed the day he discovered the clock. Buried beneath the ruins of a forgotten monastery in the Carpathian Mountains, Hartwick found an impossible mechanism, a device forged not by human hands, but something older. It contained three missing pieces, each a mechanical hand, hour, minute, and second, and a mysterious fourth component he would only come to understand later, the keystone device. Each hand pulsed with energy not measurable by science, as if they were attuned to time's raw current. He recovered the minute and second hands, but could never find the hour hand. Still, it was enough. The more he studied the device, the more it studied him. It whispered not in words, but in urges. Visions filled his sleep, empires shattered with a twist of a dial, kings made to crawl, galaxies stilled by the resetting of a clock. He realized that whoever assembled the clock and wielded its hands could control not just time, but the very will of the universe. Hartwick, once mild and benevolent, became something else. He left behind his identity, his institute, and his name. He became Father Time not as a myth, but as a being who intended to rewrite the chronology of existence in his own image. But one hand escaped him. The second hand, stolen by fate or providence, vanished during a failed test of the clock in 1945, just days before he had planned to use it during the Trinity nuclear detonation to open a temporal rift. He searched the world for it, tearing apart temples, crypts, and archives. He felt it slipping away from him, not just in distance, but in destiny. It would be many decades before he learned where it had gone. Enter Elias Fiero, a soft-spoken archaeologist and reluctant time traveler. In the dark caverns of the Virginia Appalachian Mountains on an important dig beneath a ruined native temple, Fiero unearthed a device embedded in crystal, a brilliant, prism-shaped rod humming with latent power. He called it the keystone. He didn't know what it was, not at first, but Father Time did. When he sensed the keystone's activation, Father Time's cold eyes turned westward. It was then the battle began, not of armies, but of minds and machines, of moral clarity against corrupted genius. Father Time needed the keystone. With it, in the minute and second hands, the clock could turn once more, and with it, all of time itself. But Fiero, guided by the memory of what his mentor Dr. Clovis had once said, time is not a weapon, Elias. It is a warning, would not let it fall into the wrong hands. As Father Time amassed disciples, rogue technologists, shadow governments, even the mechanical fembots of Placer, Fiero found himself hunted across ages. From the sands of ancient Edom to the steel towers of 2084, their fates wound tighter like gears in a winding spring. Father Time, once Caelum Hartwick, believed he could redeem time by owning it. But in truth, he had only fallen out of time, lost to the very force he thought he could master. And now, as the second hand resurfaces and the hour hand pulses to life in a forgotten vault beneath Constantinople, the final countdown begins. The clock is nearly whole. The universe waits. and only one man stands between it and dominion. Mr. Elias Fiero. Dr. Caelum Hartwick once held his infant daughter against his chest beneath the auroras of Reykjavik. Her laughter echoed in his ears louder than the static hum of his laboratory. His wife, Elsbeth, was an engineer of equal brilliance, the only mind he considered a peer. Together, they were the future of temporal science. But futures can be stolen. In 1945, as the war neared its end and nations scrambled to weaponize the atom, Hartwick saw a chance. Not for destruction, but for propulsion. He believed that by harnessing atomic radiation and feeding it through the recovered minute and second hands, he could punch through the chronological veil. Skip moment, he called it. A place where time stood still, where one could see every possible path and choose the best. He activated the test chamber on July 12th. His family was inside the outer ring only for observation, only for a moment. But time had other plans. The experiment backfired catastrophically. A rupture tore through the fabric of space-time, sucking Elsbeth and their daughter into what physicists now refer to as a closed temporal loop. Their bodies were never found. Only a charred watch remained. Its hands melted at 3:17 p.m. burned into Hartwick's mind forever. The second hand was lost in the implosion, sent who knows where or when. And Hartwick, standing too close to the breach, was changed. Not just mentally, not just emotionally, physically. The radiation was not nuclear, but temporal, a kind of chronotronic feedback only the clock could produce. His cells began to misbehave, refusing to age but also refusing to heal. His blood no longer ran in red lines, but in pulses of bluish light, like circuit paths. His thoughts began to blur into one another, not from madness, but from overlapping timelines. He would speak a sentence, then repeat it backward, then say it in a voice not his own. His flesh stretched thinner with each year, not weaker, less anchored. Shadows passed through him on occasion, and at times he did not cast one at all. He could walk through walls sometimes without intending to. He could appear in photographs taken centuries ago. His presence began to affect mechanical clocks. They would stutter or skip when he entered a room. The man called Caelum Hartwick no longer existed. What remained was a fourth-dimensional echo, something mortals understood only in spiritual terms. The ancients might have called him an angel or a ghost. In truth, he was a creature untethered, like light split from its source. He began to refer to himself in the plural. We are not bound by chronology. We remember futures that haven't yet occurred. We have seen the end, and it begs to be rewritten. He built the palace of the last hour, a citadel made of obsidian and temporal alloys at the magnetic apex of the earth, a place that exists outside of standard reality, glimpsed only in dreams or by dying men. There he crafted the fembots of placer, his mechanical priestesses, designed not with wires but with pieces of time itself, their circuits echoing with fragments of lost moments. He believed his family still existed within the time rift. Somewhere. Somewhen. Every action he took, every war sparked, every relic stolen was driven by this. To restore what he had lost, to turn time backward far enough to undo that single tragedy. But the clock demanded balance, and the more he attempted to master it, the more he fell under its will. There are whispers that he no longer speaks in human languages, that he utters tones that crack glass and make old men weep, that he can fold space like cloth, that when he weeps, entire hours vanish from the calendar. And now, as Elias Fiero holds the keystone and begins to reassemble the clock's broken pieces, Father Time watches from the veil. No longer a man, no longer bound by time, but still driven by love, grief, and the deadly conviction that time is his to command. The palace of the last hour was not built, it grew, grown from captured time itself. Not brick nor stone, but moments frozen in agony and joy. A crying mother in Pompeii. A boy blowing out candles in 1893. A soldier exhaling his last breath in 1917. Every brick a memory, every wall a stillborn second. Father Time willed it into being, not out of conquest, but desperation. Within this chronoprison, he discovered something terrible. He could enter any moment, slip into any second or hour that ever was. Not just view it, live it again. He called this gift the drift. It came without warning at first. A sound, a light, a scent, and suddenly he'd be there again. Watching Elsbeth laugh in the sunlit orchard. Watching his daughter learning to walk. Watching the moment they were taken. Watching himself screaming. Watching himself watching. Soon, there were many of him. Shadows of himself appearing beside him at the key moments. Watching the accident. Observing the loss. Weeping at the edges of time like mourners at a funeral that never ends. The drift had no rules. One day, he stepped into a moment where 5 of himself already stood. Another time, he turned to find himself behind him, cold, bitter, accusing. He tried speaking to them. They replied. Each believed they were the true Hartwick. But only one could be. So he did the unthinkable. He began killing the others. Some resisted. Some begged. Others turned feral, malformed by staying too long in unstable seconds. But one by one, he hunted them down through the corridors of time and unmade them, believing that if only he remained, then he could correct the mistake, preserve his identity, restore order. But the faces remained. He couldn't unsee them. He began to question, had he killed the real one? Was he now merely a shadow of the man that once was? By the time he encountered Mr. Elias Fiero, an archaeologist naively fumbling with the keystone device, Father Time no longer spoke like a man. His voice came like chimes heard underwater, layered in reverb, sentences folding over each other like pages turning all at once. Fiero, bold yet haunted, spoke to him at the edge of a ruined epic. "Who are you?" he asked. Father Time stepped forward. His robes were made of stitched pages from lost books. His hands glowed with ticking glyphs. And in his cracked, echoing voice, he answered, "I was the good doctor, the physicist, the father, the husband, the man who tried to save time and drowned in it. I was Caelum Hartwick. I am Father Time." Fiero paled, for he too had studied Hartwick's papers. The equations, the noble goals, the lost family. He knew then and there that this was not simply a war of artifacts or mechanics. This was a battle for the soul of a man who had seen too much, felt too deeply, and tried too hard to hold on to moments that were never meant to last. There are moments in history when time itself listens, when it pauses like a breath held before a whisper. One such moment occurred high atop the snow-capped ridges of the Julian Alps, where Fiero followed a map not inked in symbols, but etched into the quantum rhythm of the keystone device itself. It pulsed, as if remembering. He came upon it at dusk. An abandoned monastery, crumbling into the mountain's face, its bell tower cracked, leaning like a finger pointing back through time. The monks once called it Sanctum Horarum, the sanctuary of hours, a place not known to the Vatican, but to a secret order of temporal guardians who kept the hour hand hidden from the world and from Hartwick. The inner sanctum was lined with pendulums and dust. At its center, a great bell, and beneath the bell, wrapped in the withered robes of a monk long dead, was the hour hand. It was enormous, far larger than the minute or second. Forged not from any known metal, it hummed when Fiero approached. Not aloud, but within him, a harmonic pressure behind his eyes. The carvings upon it were not letters, but movements each line a direction, a step forward or backward. It didn't measure time. It commanded it. As he touched it, the world slowed. The snow halted in midair. His breath froze. And in the silence, he heard it, Father Time's voice, though far, as if echoing from the other side of a mountain of years. The hour has awakened. The clock nears its final winding, Fiero. And then, something deeper. The device in his satchel, the keystone shivered. It projected a star map, then a date, July 12th, 1945, the day Hartwick lost his family, the day the clock fractured. Elias Fiero understood in that moment. He was the paradox. He hadn't merely found the keystone. It had found him, drawn him. Because he, Elias Fiero, was always meant to return the pieces, not to give them to Father Time, but to face him, to unmake the clock's dominion. The hour hand's activation triggered a surge through the time stream. The sands of forgotten deserts began to rise. The palace beneath the polar magnetic veil began to crack. Fembots malfunctioned. And somewhere within his shifting dimension of memory, Father Time awoke screaming. The final hand has been found. The clock will turn. We shall begin again. Elias Fiero stood at the threshold of the palace of the last hour, cradling the hour hand across his shoulders like a crucifix. Snow did not fall here. Time did not pass. This was a realm built from hoarded seconds and stolen heartbeats. The palace pulsed with lives long ended, yet still echoing souls trapped in amber. The fembots of plaster lined the gates, twitching in broken unison, steam leaking from their limbs. They did not attack. They watched. Father Time waited upon a black dais within the central chamber, his back to Fiero, arms outstretched. Behind him, the clock, nearly complete, missing only the keystone and the reassembled second hand. The minute hand ticked slowly, resisting his will. The machine shuddered like a dying steam engine. You brought it, Father Time murmured without turning. The hour hand. You played your part, Elias. I came to end this, said Fiero, holding the keystone aloft. Time trembled. In a blink, Father Time vanished, reappearing beside Fiero with a howl of clocks. He grabbed his own face, his fractured self flickering between hundreds of versions, screaming all at once. You can't kill me. I am the moment. I am the watcher of all minutes. He struck Fiero with the force of compressed centuries, sending him crashing into the gears of the clock. The palace rippled. Time screamed. Then, loop. Virginia, Appalachian Mountains, March 3rd, 1871. A younger Elias Fiero staggered through the mouth of a cave, lantern in hand. In the rear chamber, buried beneath a mound of shale and ancient vines, he uncovered it, a polished prism that pulsed with unnatural warmth. The keystone device. The moment he touched it, his mind burned with images. A black palace, a broken man, a woman in mourning, the hands of time twisting. He dropped the lantern. Flame caught the dry moss. Smoke filled the cavern. And he remembered everything. He had done this before. He had always done this. New Orleans, 1875. Lady Mary Jane Farmer was not expecting company in her photography studio on Bourbon Street. When Fiero stepped inside, covered in dust and holding a wrapped bundle of scrolls and gears, she dropped her focusing plate. "It's you," she whispered. "I saw you once. Years ago. In a dream. Or was it in Egypt?" "You don't know me yet," Fiero said. "But you will. We were allies once. We may be again." "What are you talking about?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he unwrapped the device, revealing the now glowing second hand, recovered from a collapsed Nabatean vault. Their eyes locked. A flicker of memory passed between them. Something tragic. Something doomed. And before either could speak another word. Loop. Palace of the last hour. The clock ticked. Fiero stood once again before Father Time. But this time they both remembered. "You again," Father Time said quietly. "We've done this before. Too many times." They circled one another like wolves at the edge of memory. "Why don't you kill me?" Fiero asked. "Because some part of me still believes I'm the good one," Father Time whispered. "And some part of you still wants to be me." Time trembled. The hour hand snapped into place. The keystone glowed blinding white. The second hand began to spin backward. A shockwave of light engulfed them both. Fiero and Father Time stand once again at the origin point, the base of the cave in 1871, mere feet apart, unaware if this is the first time or the 1000th. Each holds a different piece of the clock. Each stares into the other's eyes. Neither speaks. But both understand. They are enemies. One good, one evil. Both trapped in the machine they tried to control. And somewhere, faint and cold, the ticking of the clock echoes again, counting down. When the light faded and the loop broke for reasons unknown, Mr. Elias Fiero awoke in a land unlike any other. He stood atop a terrace of white crystal overlooking a city built into the cliffs of time. Cascading gears turned above the clouds, some larger than mountains. Rivers of liquid starlight ran between spires. The sky overhead shimmered with slow-moving constellations, not stars, but frozen seconds. He had arrived in Placer, the fabled city said to exist between seconds, within the margin between now and what was. The people of Placer, known simply as Placerians, were tall and graceful, robed in gray and white. Their eyes shimmered like mirrored glass, reflecting not what they saw, but when they had seen it. They were not immortals, but undated, living outside the sequence of aging and linear decay. They welcomed Fiero. "You have broken the loop," said their eldest, Thelani's the Still, "or perhaps the loop has broken for you." He was taken to the Hall of Bearings, a great dome beneath which ticked the heart gear, the mechanical center of the Placerians' understanding of chronology. It was here Fiero would learn to harness the keystone. Over many days, though time had no true name here, he studied under Thelani's and the others. The keystone device, they taught, was not merely a power source. It was a conductor capable of focusing intent through time itself. It did not bend time to one's will. It is their will, and Mr. Fiero is its owner. A name lost to atlases and timelines alike, erased by the erosion of centuries and the cruelty of conquest. And yet it endured, not in maps, but in memory. Located in what mortals once called the Caucasus Highlands, Placer was built upon the rim of a temporal fissure that pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the earth. It was here that the ancient chronoscribes first learned to hear time, not measure it. They mapped the spirals, recorded the eddies and flows, and discovered that time was not a line, but a loom. The people of Placer were time weavers, not men, not magicians, but caretakers of the strands. At the heart of their society was the cradle of threads, a chamber woven of quartz, gold, and crystalline sand. Here, the keystone was once kept in its original housing, the balance fork, now long separated. Fiero arrived in Plasso through a rift that opened as he engaged the keystone in a ritual atop the bell tower of Sanctum Herarum. The device pulsed in rhythm with the hour hand, two of the four pieces now aligned, and in that union, a Terran reality gave birth to a portal. He staggered through it, collapsing in the courtyard of Placer. The people received him not with fear, but recognition. He had been prophesied. The man with the memory of tomorrow, they called him. Elder Nirella, matron of threads, brought him into the Hall of Echoes and laid the keystone before the circle of weavers. There, for the first time, Fiero began to understand the truth. The keystone was not a weapon. It was a harmonic key meant to stabilize timelines, not collapse them. It could amplify resonance, access sealed strands of memory, and even weave temporary bridges between epochs. The clock, Elder Nirella told him, was a prison built by the ancient corruptors. The hands were shackles. The keystone, the only key to unlock and undo it. Fiero, weary from the looping torments of Father Time's pursuit, began training in secret arts. How to stand still within a raging moment. How to touch an event without altering its outcome. How to step into the silence between seconds, what the weavers called the breath of the world. Meanwhile, in a void beyond chronology, Father Time howled as he felt the shift. Placer was active again, and with a gesture of fury, he unleashed scouts into the Strand's proto-fembots, still crude but loyal, designed to corrupt the weavers and reverse the harmony. For now, Placer stood strong, but the clock's completion neared, and once all four pieces aligned, keystone, hour, minute, and second, the original corruption would awaken. The hour hand ticked once. The second hand vibrated. The palace of the last hour pulsed with fury. And deep within the cradle of threads, Fiero heard a whisper from the keystone itself. The loop must break. You must go back. You must choose the right moment. Fiero stands atop the watchtower of Placer, gazing across the river of starlight that flows through the valley. Lady Jane's silhouette appears behind him, drawn by the keystone's light, though she doesn't understand why. They stand together, not touching, but aware. I think I've been here before, she says. You have, he replies, but not yet. Where the first cracks in the society of weavers appear, and Fiero must decide whether to stay and defend Placer or return to the cave in 1871 and break the loop once and for all. The valley of Placer lay shrouded in golden fog, the time thread river now flowing backward and forward at once. The cradle of threads pulsed like a heart under siege. The fembots, now legion, had breached the outer rim of the city, their circuitry infected with the madness of the clock. Once holy seconds became daggers, twisted moments hurled like javelins across the sky. Elias Fiero stood atop the final gate, his coat torn, eyes glowing with the resonance of the keystone embedded in his chest like a star of memory. Beside him, Lady Jane Farmer, rifle in hand, her lens pack filled with still-frame prisms, captured time. The weavers prepared their last chant, strands of harmonic balance drawn tight between them. They would fight. They would not bend. And when the attack came, it came from all sides of time. Father Time, or what remained of him, strode forward. One version led the Fembot legions with fire in his ropes. Another entered through the river of starlight as a ghost of 1945. A third broke from the clouds as a beam of pure fourth-dimensional agony. And behind them more. Some wearing his face. Some not. Some weeping. Some laughing. All of them Hartwick. All of them broken. You see now. The voices called in unison. You cannot stop a man who has no beginning and no end. Fiero clenched the keystone. He understood now. He wasn't here to win. He was here to preserve. He unleashed the full harmony of the keystone not as a weapon, but as a shield, a wave of balance that spread through the valley like dawn. It didn't kill the invaders. It returned them to their moments, their birthplaces, their origins. The threads began to reweave. Each time ghost of Father Time flickered, screamed, collapsed. Not destroyed, unmade, pulled back to where they should have been. The main figure, the original, the good doctor himself, stood still. He looked at Fiero with tired, burning eyes. You think this ends me? It doesn't. There are too many of me now. I know, said Fiero quietly, but this was never about ending you. He stepped forward and whispered, this was about remembering who you were. And with that, Fiero touched the hour hand to the keystone. A wave of peace surged outward. The Fembots fell still. The river slowed. And the doctor, Father Time, let out a quiet, broken sigh. He vanished. Not in pain, but in acceptance. Placer stood. The weavers began rebuilding. Lady Jane returned to her photography, capturing the now and the never was. Fiero stood atop the temple cliffs, watching the final light of the keystone dim. The clock would never be whole again, and that was good. Time must be free. But Fiero would remain vigilant, because the question remained. How many Father Times are there? How many shadows still wander the folds of time, seeking to rewrite pain? No one will ever truly know. But Mr. Elias Fiero will be there, watching, guarding, because this wasn't his story. It was the good doctor's story. The tale of a man who loved too deeply and fell too far. And time will never forget him. The end.